If the November Metro North Committee could come to order, please. Do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we have 3 public speakers signed up. We ask them to adhere to the 2-minute time limit and to speak on agenda items. There is a clock now installed, and you'll be able to see the time as it runs off. The first speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. Just real quick, I presented an article to you, Chairman Metzger. It's very promising. It's about a transit-oriented project in the village of Spring Valley around the train station. That is a depressed area, and for a developer to get involved would be very beneficial. And we hope that Metro North gets together with the local officials and the developer and see that we can really do something wonderful in Spring Valley and convert that to a first-class transportation hub. The second thing is we had a meeting with New Jersey Transit, and very quickly we've been complaining about not having accurate information during inclement weather. Well, New Jersey Transit is proposing, and they showed us drafts of what they call inclement weather schedules, level 1 and level 2. And this is at least a step in the right direction. However, they're basing the schedules on weekend service, not on weekday service. And level 1 would be taking the weekend service and adding a few trains. Level 2 would be the straight weekend service. And there's a big problem here because Metro North runs express trains on weekends after the rush hour period, so they're really not useful like they would be on the regular schedules. We're asking Metro North to take a long, lean look at these schedules. And the final item is a problem that happens when train 1618 hits Secaucus, and that's our second Metro North Express train. And what happens is there's a 10-minute wait between the trains. There are no trains stop at Secaucus at that time, although 4 trains go through without stopping. We've asked New Jersey Transit to do something about it. Right now, they say no. So at the very least, swap out the train that when it arrives as a single-level train with a multi-level train. And we're going to push this more and see that we can get this done, even though they've said no. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Omar Vera.
Bonjour and greetings, everyone. Oh, sorry, there you go. Welcome back to, we're now in the holiday season, so I just want to make a couple of recommendations. Regarding the minutes last month, you mentioned, I said like southbound platforms should say like directions to Manhattan rather than to New York. That's only necessary if you're traveling for stations within New York City. So stations like in the Bronx, southbound platforms should say Manhattan. But outside New York, like Yonkers, like London, Yonkers, up northward, should just say to New York, southbound. At least to respect the boundaries of NYC and its 5 boroughs. So if you can make a correction on that on the minutes for next month, that's fine. Second, like I said, I reiterate everything I said last month, just to that bridge be connected from west of Hudson to east of Hudson to maintain better flow. You understand that, Veronica. And third, so I'm in favor of like Penn Access because it's a long time, but I feel like we need one more station in Queens for Metro North. And with that, everything else here is pretty much shipshape, so see you around at Long Island. Thanks.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
Thank you, Harvey Weinstein. Last Thursday, Senator Gillibrand was on CNN describing her sexual harassment experiences. Things that were not being able to be talked about before are now being talked about. I got new information since I was here last month, and I now recommend, Catherine, that you be retained as president Metro North Railroad, and Susan, I recommend that you stay as chairman of the committee. The information I found was a report on the Roaring Brook Red Box by staff, and a second report on the Whitestone Bridge Yellow Line by staff. Both staff reports were riddled with errors. New York City DOT Law Department, as an expert on the manual of uniform traffic control devices, can verify what I've put in reports. Those reports are now part of the public record. They have created a financial liability for the MTA. Anybody injured at a railroad crossing where there is a red box can sue the MTA successfully. It's not one department, it's two departments independently showing that their traffic engineers have no idea what's in the manual. Andy Saul, you asked last month or a couple of months ago why a certain contract was the way it was and why there wasn't better information. The reason was that they have been letting their staff who are not competent.
Would you please conclude your remarks?
I read the chart up there. If you read the chart up there, I can continue because I've read it. The information that you got and the point that you raised was excellent. Why was there only one bid for that contract? Well, it's because they've been deferring to an engineering staff that's incompetent. How do we unwind that? Much of the information
Mr. Bowden, will you conclude your remarks,
I
please?
will conclude my remarks when I am complete, and according to the rules behind me, I'm well within my rights. And this is what goes on. Here is a gentleman reading something that's irrelevant, because what I'm saying is what's been going on here and costing billions of dollars in wrong items, you're not willing to understand. The result is you could be running 9-car trains instead of 8-car trains and saving billions of dollars and adding 13.
Sir, your 2 minutes are up.
You can stop interrupting me.
Sir, your 2 minutes are up. That concludes our public speakers.
Thank you. The minutes are in your book. May I have a motion to approve? All in favor? Thank you. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan.
In that case, may we have the President's report?
Sure. First, I can talk a little bit about operations. During the month of October, east of Hudson trains operated slightly below goal at 92.1, and year-to-date we stand above goal at 93.9. The Hudson line operated at 89.9, the Harlem at 94.0, and the New Haven line at 92.0 during the month of October. The Hudson line performance was adversely affected during the off-peak due to required track maintenance work. During the AM peak, we experienced an increase of delays in the 6 to 10 minute range because of slip slide, which is a common occurrence during this time of year in the Northeast. West of Hudson operated at 93.8% for the month of October, with the Pascack Valley line operating at 96.7 and the Port Jervis at 89.7. Performance on the Port Jervis was impacted by late bus connections during the weekday off-peak busing that is currently in effect to support infrastructure work. Year-to-date performance on the west of Hudson lines is 94.6%. New Jersey Transit engineer availability remains an issue, resulting in 12 canceled trains, which is 0.7%. Off-peak busing continues on the Port Jervis until this coming Friday, November 17th. Regular weekday service between Port Jervis and Harriman will resume on Monday, November 20th. Fleet availability remains good with a consist compliance of 99.1. Those service disruptions caused New Haven consist compliance to be a bit below goal during the peak periods. And our fleet mean distance between failures in September operated above goal at 272,803 miles. This past Friday night into Saturday early morning, there was a successful removal of span 191, which is the span over of the old Tappan Zee Bridge that passed over Metro North's Hudson tracks. It was a very cold night. It was a kind of an interesting operation, but it was ultimately very successful. During that time frame, roughly midnight until 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, we ran a bus operation between Tarrytown and Yonkers. We did not run any train service while the PIC was going on, but the PIC was successful. I want to thank all the people from Metro North who showed up in the middle of the night in very cold temperatures to see it through. And it was, we're very relieved that it's over. In terms of today's agenda, as part of our ongoing efforts to deliver PTC on time, we have a procurement in this morning's committee agenda where we are seeking committee and board approval for engineering support services to support our radio frequency testing. The contract will cover both pre-implementation services and will also provide support during the early phases of PTC. A little bit about operations. Again, during the month of October, we offered a few special fall foliage trains during the month of October. Actually, on October 28th and Saturday, November 4th. We had 5 additional Hudson Line trains for leaf watchers, hikers, and day trippers. 3 additional Hudson Line trains travel from GCT to Beacon and Poughkeepsie in the morning, with 2 additional trains coming back from Poughkeepsie to Grand Central in the afternoon. On both Saturdays, we carried more than 3,800 riders on 7 trains between 8:30 and 11:45 to points between Tarrytown and Poughkeepsie. This is 4 times the normal weekend volume of riders during the same period during other times of the year. So one of the things that we're thinking about for next fall is actually having this as a permanent part of the schedule because it was such a successful couple of weekends for us. During the month of October, our preliminary review of customer complaints indicates an increase, actually, of 32% as compared to the prior month of September, which is obviously not a very good number. But it is consistent with the slight decline in service reliability that we just talked about during that month. Tonight and tomorrow, Metro North and the Hudson Valley Greenway invite local leaders, trail groups, interested organizations, and members of the public to attend public information meetings to seek input on the creation of the Beacon Line Trail. This rail trail is going to be a vital segment of the new Empire State Trail, which is a 750-mile bike and walking pathway from New York City to Canada and from Albany to Buffalo that is being built under Governor Cuomo's leadership and that will be completed by 2020. The public meetings are being held tonight from 6 to 8 at the Pauling High School Auditorium in Pauling, and then tomorrow night at the Putnam County T.O. Tops Building Auditorium on Old Route 6 in Carmel. The trail will revitalize a little-used rail line that runs east-west across Dutchess and Putnam. This line is known as the Beacon Line, and it connects with Metro North's Hudson Line at Beacon and runs parallel with the Harlem Line north of southeast. The trail will be a shared-use bicycling and pedestrian path running along a 23-mile portion of the Metro North Beacon Line corridor from Brewster to Hopewell Junction, and it will connect up with the Dutchess Rail Trail. One existing track along this portion of the rail line will remain intact for possible future use, and the rail segment from Hopewell Junction to Beacon is not included in the proposed trail. The trail will be 12 feet wide and surfaced with asphalt, and appropriate treatments will be installed at all road crossings to provide safe trail use. Metro North will oversee design and construction of the project, which is slated to start in the spring of 2019. The construction will be funded by New York State through funds administered by the Hudson Valley Greenway as part of the larger Empire State Trail Initiative. Finally, there's a couple of holiday traditions that are going to start up again very soon. Today, actually, the annual Grand Central Holiday Fair, which is in Vanderbilt Hall in the terminal, will open up. And this coming Thursday, the annual Holiday Train Show and the Transit Museum location in Grand Central will also open and will stay open until February 4th. And that's all I have this morning. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy. With regards to the categories of delay, I'm looking at page 51. On the Harlem line, weather and environmental is greater than 40%, which is significantly higher than weather and environmental for Hudson and the New Haven lines. Why is that?
If I could answer that, it's because of the fall slippery rail conditions. The other thing that makes that percentage appear to be higher is the overall low quantity of delay minutes. When the delay minutes are relatively small for the other categories, the increase in the low adhesions basically generate that higher percentage as compared to the other lines. Both the New Haven and the Hudson line still have a good amount of ongoing track work that we do there on a regular basis. So you'll notice on that section, that's basically what's making the low adhesion percentages a lot lower. It's because we have a lot more track work on the New Haven and the Hudson as compared to the Harlem.
Two things. First of all, obviously Metro North has leaves and Long Island has pumpkins. We have everybody who wants to go out to the pumpkins in October, and that's why we run extra trains for that. But the real question was, we hear every month from you and your staff the continuing issues relating to New Jersey Transit and their inability to provide the number of trains that I assume they are required to provide in some context. What are our, or let me ask it this way, what, if any, are their consequences for their lack of being able to provide the number of trains as required in the contract? Do we have penalties that we can impose on them? Do we have something else we can do? Because hearing it month to month to month to month, while it becomes repetitious, it also becomes very frustrating, and I'm sure to our friends who take those trains or are supposed to take those trains, frustrating is not the correct word. It's a word much more significant than that. But what can we do, if anything?
To a large extent, the issues that we're seeing on New Jersey Transit are, as we discussed, the result of this shortage of engineers that they're experiencing. In terms of legal recourse, what I would like to do is have Rich prepare something for you on that separately, and we can talk about that offline. Okay.
As I said, I don't want to continue to go down
No, I
the
completely understand.
We get it every month,
Nope.
and sooner or later, we got to do something.
I understand.
Because until they know it's not acceptable, and I'm sure you've told them it's not acceptable, but I think it's time this board tells them in a more
understand.
emphatic fashion it's not acceptable.
No, we have regular service meetings, but I completely understand what
Right.
you're saying.
Okay. Thank
Yes, Veronica.
Just another quick question. So on the standee report, I noticed that standees jumped significantly in October for the New Haven line. And why is that?
The issue with standees in particular in the New Haven is related to what Ms. Rinaldi talked about, is the CONSIS compliance during that period is also lower than goal. What happens on the New Haven line is we're actually carrying the maximum number of people with the minimum number of cars. A number of years, the board approved the purchase of M8 single cars. There were 25 cars made in that purchase. So on the New Haven side, we actually run what I'll call more customized CONSIS sizes. We have 7-car trains, 8-car, 9-car, 10-car, 11-car. We can actually run odd CONSIS there. And whenever there's a service disruption that causes 2 trains to swap and get out of cycle, one train would have an extra car and another train would be shorter car, and that then generates the projected number of standees for that time period.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for your comments. Certainly, Mitch, it's frustrating to have your train canceled, and that has happened. And I want to put in a plug for next fall to take a foliage trip. Not only is it beautiful on the Hudson line, but the west of Hudson line is absolutely gorgeous, and we have the Moodna Viaduct, which I'm sure many of you are not familiar with, but it's the longest train trestle east of the Mississippi, way above treetop level. And the first time Kathy saw it, I know she was absolutely awestruck.
I wasn't. It was August, I think, so I didn't get to see the foliage, so maybe next year I'll go back.
It's beautiful in the snow, too. Now, may we have the safety report, please, Mr. Vonashek?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. The safety report begins on page 20. The customer accident rate is nearly 31% lower than the previous 12 months. The employee lost time injury rate is up 11% versus the previous 12 months. Overexertion continues to be the biggest driver of these injuries, and we're going to focus on these as part of our next safety focus day on December 4th. Grade crossing incidents, derailments, and collisions remain unchanged for this month's report. And finally, our community outreach program, TRACS, has reached nearly 56,000 individuals through September. This concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions on safety? Hearing none. May we have the police report, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
System-wide for the month of October, total major felonies were down by 7. 23 versus 30, or a reduction of 23%. And year-to-date, there were 218 crimes versus 259. That's down 41, or 16%. One problem area year-to-date is in the area of grand larceny auto, where we're looking at an increase of 3 for the year, 10 versus 7, although there were no vehicles stolen in the month of October. In Metro North, we experienced an increase in major felonies of 7. That's one crime. For the month of October, that's 15 versus 14, up by 1. Year-to-date, Metro North is experienced 119 crimes versus 134, down 15 or 11%. Now, on October 29th, we participated in a full-scale field exercise sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security at Grand Central Terminal. NYPD, MTA PD, FDNY, New York State Police, National Guard, and others participated. This was a preparedness drill that really gave us an opportunity to practice our interoperability operations with our partner agencies. A lot was learned that night. And on November 1st, we hosted a visit from the new TSA administrator, David Pekoski. He came to police headquarters toward Grand Central Terminal and observed our officers. I welcomed the opportunity to have him meet our officers, state troopers, and National Guard. And one last thing, I want to commend the MTA officers and the TBTA Bridge and Tunnel officers on the great work at the marathon. They secured the start of the parade at the Verrazano, the length of the parade, and the entire race. So congratulate them on a successful operation. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Yes.
2 questions, Chief. I noticed that the following areas involved increased incidents of arrest this year over last. Felony assault, assault misdemeanor, criminal mischief, drug offenses, graffiti, theft of services, warrant arrests. In each of those areas, the numbers were up. Why?
Well, in many instances, I look at that as good, proactive police work.
Understood.
Let me give you some examples. In the area of drug arrests, obviously, we've spoken about it before. The trend is nationwide. We've increased our engagements with those that are having problems with drugs. Marijuana arrests, 46. Cocaine, 16. Heroin, that's the problem. 19 arrests, along with other Xanax, opioids, LSD, Percocet. And that ties in with our rescues. All of our officers have Narcan, and up to this day, we've had 88 saves. That's 88 lives that we brought back from a potential death. Criminal mischief. We're up in criminal mischief 54 versus 44 in 2016. And the breakdown is mostly graffiti incidents. You know, we've made 13 graffiti arrests and other incidents involving damage to vehicles, damage to waiting rooms, windows, doors, store property. We've made arrests involving our retail locations. We had a few incidents, too, of damage to trains and vending machines, too. So it's a good indicator that I see that our officers are proactively making arrests.
My next question is, how many of these were at Grand Central Station? And my last question is, I noticed the absence at this meeting of data concerning hate crimes.
And I'm remiss in not giving you that.
And let me go back. How many at Grand Central?
Commissioner, our arrests include misdemeanors and felonies. I do not have the misdemeanor breakdown at Grand Central. I know it's significant, the work that we've been putting in that facility. I will be able to get you that.
I'd like to get it for a reason. Let me tell you what the reason is. Over and above the fact that it has the highest concentration of people aggregated on the Metro-North property. The other reason is it also has the highest incident of homelessness, using that as a base. And I'd like to see if there's a correlation. So if you could let us have that breakdown at the next meeting, that would be helpful.
Will do.
Right? Secondly, hate crimes.
Hate crimes. And I apologize for not including this in my original report and oversight. In 2017, we've had 23 incidents of hate crime versus 8 the same time period the previous year. All but 1 involved graffiti. In the month of October, we had 3 incidents of bias graffiti. They occurred at Bridgehampton, Floral Park, and Katona.
Swastikas?
Yes. Swastikas, of the 3, 2 were swastikas. 1 on a platform, 1 on a fence.
Is there anything affirmative that we can do to slow down the pace of this, if not eliminate it?
Aggressive enforcement, awareness from the public, awareness from all of our employees to call the police immediately. Our officers are making arrests. We need to be proactive about it and have our partners call 911 and let us know when someone is marking up something, whether it's bias-related or not. It's damage to property, and we will act on that if we have enough information and we can get there fast enough.
Forgive me if I may. Joe Fox tells us that in the city area, where in transit, for example, the hate crimes and the graffiti are up over 1,000%. And what you've told us, it looks like even more than that. My question to you is, at what point in time is there something that can be done to deal with these scum? And if you could give that some thought, I would really appreciate it. We learned 75 years ago that this was a precursor to what was a Holocaust. I don't want it to happen again in my lifetime, at least.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Veronica.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Might you still include those stats, the hate crime stats, in the materials? You had provided it at some point. We know it's available in transit, but can we revert to having it as a page in these materials?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, let me just add a footnote, if I may, Madam Chairman. In hate crimes, not just because they may involve swastikas, whether they involve Muslims or whatever else, That's got to stop.
Of course.
Any additional comments? Thank you for your report, Chief. We appreciate the work that you do. Now, information items, please.
Yeah, we have a few information items this morning. The first is the Metro North Committee Charter, which is a required annual work plan information item. Included in your committee book as an information item is a draft of the revised version of the committee charter. The changes are minor and non-substantive. Some items have been repositioned and renumbered, and a provision was added stating that the committee will set the workflow for the year. The committee charters will be on the agenda for approval at December's Governance Committee meeting, and then they'll go to the full board.
It's a good opportunity to review it, and if there are any comments, I'd like to know about them before the December meeting. Thank you.
The second information item relates to our holiday schedules and shopper specials. We've developed special timetables for Thanksgiving weekend, Christmas and New Year's holidays to address the travel demands of our customers over these holiday periods. In addition, we have a number of shoppers' special trains which will operate for 6 weekends between November 18th and December 24th to attract customers during the holiday season. The final information item relates to a lease agreement for Bedford Hills Station. This item will be presented at the Finance and at the Board for approval. It's the renewal of a lease agreement with the town of Bedford for the Bedford Hills Station building, which has been leased since 1975. Last year, the town completed a renovation of the interior space, and the new lease will require the town to continue day-to-day maintenance and to undertake certain capital improvements, including the replacement of the roof. The lease will allow Metro North to continue to realize cost avoidance associated with ongoing maintenance and repairs of the building. The town will use the building only for municipal purposes and nonprofit community-based events, while allowing Metro North customers unrestricted access to the waiting room and restrooms. And that concludes the information items.
Questions on the information items? Hearing none, we'll move on to procurements.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There are 2 procurements in this month's package totaling $500,000. There is 1 non-competitive procurement and 1 competitive procurement in the amount of $500,000. There are no ratifications. The non-competitive procurement action is a contract award to Dayton T. Brown in the not to exceed amount of $500,000 for engineering and support services related to 220 Hz radio frequency testing for PTC implementation. These services are required to support MNR's existing staff with additional engineering resources in the evaluation and testing of radio communications, ensuring interoperability and avoiding any radio frequency interferences. Dayton T. Brown is uniquely qualified to perform these services and has PTC-specific experience with the MNR PTC system. The competitive procurement action is a request for the RFP process for the rehabilitation of and improvement to outlying stations. Metro North Railroad requests the board adopt a resolution declaring that competitive sealed bidding is impractical or inappropriate, and it is therefore in the public's best interest to use the competitive request for proposal process pursuant to Public Authorities Law Section 1265A to solicit design-build services for the rehabilitation of and improvements of outlying stations. 2 stations have been identified at this time, Beacon and Southeast. Additional stations are currently under consideration, including West of Hudson stations. Through the current efforts implementing the Enhanced Station Initiative and the Customer Service Initiative, Metro North is developing new standards focused on improving the customer's experience at stations. These improvements, which serve functional and aesthetic purposes, include improved entrances, lighting, amenities, communications, and new technology. Additionally, certain outlying stations require remedial work to bring them into a better state of good repair. At the conclusion of the scoping of these projects, Metro North will make a final determination on whether the design-build procurement methodology is appropriate to use in this process. May I please have a vote on the procurements presented in the November package?
I make a motion to recommend these procurements. Is there a second? Thank you. Now, is there discussion?
Go ahead.
We've got a lot of you.
Let me ask it this way. the last paragraph of the Dayton T. Brown appropriation indicates that the pricing for it was negotiated by the U.S. General Services Administration under its contract. Could you explain how that works in our regard?
Yes, that pricing was that pricing was secured by the feds, and that is the optimum best pricing available. It's gone through the scrutiny of the feds. We're receiving the benefit of that best pricing or favored customer pricing.
Am I to assume then that because I cannot assume the feds negotiated that price just for us. They negotiated that price for Dayton T. Brown for a variety of commuter railroads, for Dayton T. Brown to do this work for a variety of railroads, and if a railroad wanted Dayton T. Brown to do it, they got the benefit of that price. Is that the way this is working?
That is correct.
So the Dayton T. Brown is doing this same work, or reasonably similar work, for a variety of railroads, and Metro-North is taking advantage of that opportunity to use a company that has already been approved, for lack of a better term. I won't use the word approved in a legal sense, but in a other sense, approved by the feds and at a price agreed to by the feds. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir, you're on point.
Thank you.
I'd like to call your attention to page 45, and this is by way of a suggestion. The sentence reads, the last sentence on the first full paragraph, there are no known MWBE participation opportunities. I emphasize the word opportunities, as DTB is the only authorized provider of these services in the Northeast region. Seems to me that we ought to take the chance that there may be an opportunity and not just foreclose it because it's the only known operator or it's another sole source. The word opportunities bothers me. And what I would suggest, if I may in the future, that we press the opportunities for MBWE or MWBE at every opportunity we have, not just forego it.
Kathy will respond to this.
Chuck, we are, I think, as you know, very committed to increasing participation from various minority vendors. In this case, this is a positive train control related procurement, and we have been challenged by this committee and challenged by the board, management, all of our stakeholders, essentially to pull out the stops to try to identify opportunities to better our schedule. So we recognize this as a sole source procurement with a vendor who has been identified as being able to supplement our services. So we believe strongly that this will assist greatly in terms of being able to improve our performance next year with respect to the delivery of PTC, but we are extremely mindful of your concerns with respect to the minority contracting community, and we are always on the lookout for opportunities to better our participation with those contracts.
Kathy, I do not fault you one iota in pulling out all the stops or doing all of the things you can to achieve a desired result. And nor do I fault you even on this aspect of it. What I say to you is simply this. Never, never resist the opportunity to gain an opportunity in this area. And to foreclose it, I think, is wrong. And I don't think you're doing that, by the way.
I understand.
Mr. Saul.
In the presentation on page 46, the RFP process, a couple of questions come to mind. One, during the briefing, we had identified other stations, predominantly White Plains, I assume, was going to be included in this procurement. And here you only mention Beacon and Southeast? What about all the other Westchester stations
So
that we had talked about?
So those other stations, so the initial 5 enhanced stations, so you've got White Plains, Portchester, Crestwood, 125th Street, and somebody else that I'm not remembering. Those are already the subject of an ongoing procurement. So that procurement is already taking place. So these are additional stations that the improvements to those stations, so Beacon and Southeast, will be done via a separate procurement action. So this is the request to use the RFP for those additional stations.
Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you do one large procurement for
Well,
all these?
because the first procurement is very far advanced at this point in time. We don't even have scope for these stations yet. So we need to develop scope, but in connection with the other station package, you had indicated some concerns with respect to the use of the design-build process. By taking the time to work through the scope, we will also be able to determine whether the design-build process is an appropriate way to procure those services.
Okay.
So we're a little bit,
So now you
yeah.
hit the second point.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't know yet.
I did have
Yeah.
concern with I didn't realize this was a second.
Yeah, this is a
separate
second
okay.
round, yeah.
But I do still have huge concern
I understand.
with the number of bidders or participants, whatever way you want to call it,
Right.
in the design-build process. And I don't know what we're going to do with that, but I was very skeptical, as you know,
I know.
Kathy, with the amount of people
I know.
that were finalists in this thing.
Yep.
You know, we had a huge amount of participants that came to this meeting, which I thought was a great idea that you had. I guess you'd call it an interest meeting. And I think the number was 65, if I remember, that came, a lot from upstate New York and areas where, you know, they may be very hungry for work, but yet, when we got down to the design build, the way I understand it, there were just very few real participants that submitted, final proposals.
Well, I just want to sort of put things in two different boxes. So what you're referring to is the procurement with respect to the 5 enhanced stations.
Correct.
That will be coming to this committee either in December or January. In that case, there were 4 proposers, and then 2 were shortlisted. In this case, we don't know how many proposers there are going to be, obviously, because we have not yet worked out the scope for those 2 stations. But mindful of your concerns with respect to whether design-build is appropriate for these kinds of projects, as we work through the scope, we will ultimately make a determination as to whether design-build is the way to go. And in any event, when we're at the point of moving forward with that process, we will have to report back to the committee.
But
So we can have a more...
What's going to be, okay, so what's going to be the criteria that's different from this large one that's coming down the tracks, as they say? What's going to be the difference here?
Well, once we work through the scope, we can have that conversation. We still don't know what the scope of the improvements are
All right,
at either of those 2 projects.
All right, but
And it
We're at a
will
very
come-
early stage.
The agreement is
Great.
that it will come back to
But
the...
it will come
that's
back.
good.
It will come
That's
back.
good. I'm happy with that.
It will come back.
But the point is, now what do we do with the really large one
No.
that's coming where I don't feel we had the interest that we should have had? And I think, again, just like what happened with the Massachusetts Electric and the other one, that the other big procurement that we just did design build, I think you're going to be right back in the same place where you're going to get a very high price because it hasn't been competitively bid out and there hasn't been enough participants in there. So, I mean, I assume
We'll see.
nothing's going to happen. It is where it is, and it's going to come to the committee. But I think that's really wrong,
Okay.
because I think we're going to overpay again tremendously.
Well, on this one, as I
This
said...
one, fine, I
But this one
understand.
we'll
We'll
see.
see what-
The
but
other
the
one...
other one is,
yeah, the other
you
one's
got a
gonna come-
major, to me, it's really a flawed process.
Well, the committee, as you know, has a role in terms of ultimately determining whether we should award the contracts with respect to that first package. It will be an action item for this committee in either December or January, and, we will have a full debate informed by the numbers when we get together and talk about it then. At this point, the procurement is still ongoing, so we don't have a lot of information in terms of what,
All right,
we don't
but
have any
now-
information in terms of what the pricing is.
But now's the time, I think we should do some work on it and see what people feel about, or what the professionals feel about the bidding process there before it comes to the committee?
Well, we will. I mean, right? I mean, it's an open procurement. We do not have the proposals back yet. We will have the proposals back, and we will have had the opportunity to review the cost proposals and engage with the proposers before bringing it back to you with a recommendation. So that has not happened yet because we're still in the open procurement. But before we bring it back to you with a recommendation, we will have the benefit of the cost proposals and the benefit of some conversation with the proposers to see what we think makes the most sense. And we're not going to submit anything to you for approval that we're not comfortable with.
And when the information is available, we'll be able to vet it more thoroughly than we have been able to so far.
If I may, Mr. Saul, you know, your message has come through loud and clear from my department, and I've already mobilized my staff to start doing a much more aggressive outreach in the Dutchess, Putnam County, and the northern counties to try to get as many contractors as possible. Now, it is an open procurement and there's no guarantee, but I'm certainly taking a very aggressive stance in trying to do as much outreach as I possibly can to get as many proposers in as possible.
Yes, Ms. Vanderpool.
With regards to the FRA loan that we received for PTC, is that just capital, or will that cover capital only, or capital and operating?
Capital only.
So I noticed that Dayton Brown is coming out of our operating budget.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a tally yet of how much we've expended already on PTC on the operating side?
Kim, do you know?
Yeah, actually, Kathy, I'm not sure if it is capital only. I think we'll get back to you on that. I
Okay.
believe we're putting in force account
okay.
charges into that also, but
Okay.
we'll check on that.
We'll get back to you with all
Yeah.
Thank you.
the money questions.
Thank you.
I think you'll get back to all of us on that? Okay. Additional discussion? May I ask those in favor to so indicate? Those opposed? Both of the procurements pass. Monthly reports?
The monthly reports on operations, finances, ridership, and the capital program are included in the agenda book, and we can answer any questions that you might have on those reports.
On the reports. Hearing none, our next committee meeting will be December 11th. I'm sure we'll see all of you at the board meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? Second. Those in favor?